So the last few days have been pretty good. I've actually been feeling really good and feeling much more energized about things, which has been really good. I got a chance to go to Lawrence on Saturday. There was a couple of reasons why. The first one was that there was a show called Collectorama. I keep saying that wrong. It's not even that hard to say. It's put on by my buddy Craig Klotz, and it's sort of an amalgamation sort of show. There were, I believe, a few artists there, some different crafters, some comic people, toy people, a little bit of video games. There was a coin seller in the back. There was a lot of different things like that, and people selling their own personal collections, which is really cool. There's a lot of other shows happening in the Kansas City area that are smaller sort of shows that are up and coming from KC Collector Expo and some of those other ones that have been happening. But Craig's shows are the original ones that have always done this sort of thing. But Collectorama specifically was opening up into a wider niche that had people selling all the things I mentioned, but also things like music. There was one, and it was one of those things where I went to the show and I was like, well, I have a budget I need to adhere to. This is definitely a show that I wish I had had way more money on hand, because there was things I found there. There was an 8-track that I wanted, like, for those of you that don't know, it was an old format of music playing. And just some different things that I found, but there were great deals. There was a guy there selling Gundam models, and if you bought one, like if you bought a $10 one, you got 2 for free. If you bought a $50 one, you got 2 $50 ones for free. It was really crazy. There was plenty of people that were willing to wheel and deal on stuff. A lot. My buddy Cameron Kiefer was there. Here's a photo of the two of us. I did not know was taken of us, and I picked up the Peanuts soundtrack from him for the latest CGI incarnation of the Peanuts. I love the soundtrack. I love that movie. Aside from that, after we got done, we stayed there probably about, I'd say maybe about 2 hours or so. Kind of did a couple rounds, talked to people, kind of hemmed and hawed over different things we wanted, went back to some of the vendors, different stuff like that, just seeing what was out there. And it felt good to get out. It felt good to kind of support a lot of the local people and be able to pick up what I could there. But we also, my brother had not been to 1313 Mockingbird Lane, which is a wonderful toy and collectible shop in Lawrence, Kansas. And it's down on the main drag. And it was really cool. My buddy Terry runs a fantastic shop, and I didn't actually get any footage in there. I didn't want to record because there was a lot of people, which was nice to see, right? So it's Easter weekend, people are in town, people are getting out to do things, and there was the show happening as well, too. So you got Collectorama happening, which means any other sort of pop culture, avenue is going to have people coming over into that. And I know this because people were talking about it, like, oh, hey, we came here first, now we're going to head over to Collectorama. And I was really happy to hear that stuff. Craig's shows are very close to me because he was the very first one he was the very first show I ever did. Way back, I did a fan con, and I loved it. It was fantastic. It was the very first show in fact, the very first convention. Okay, so there's kind of a caveat to that. It was technically the second convention that I kind of attended, and this was in a hotel where it was just one little room, and everyone was kind of in a circle, and Craig was in the center. And I think that's even when I first met Chris Jackson for the first time. I had no idea that he ran Planet at the time. I had no idea. And I was just getting back into the whole zone of wanting to even be interested in comics really hardcore and, thinking about possibly publishing my stuff. So this was years and years and years ago. Probably now going on over a decade ago, which is really nuts. But that was the first show I ever did where I was like set up and everything. I was super nervous. So because Craig was nice enough to offer me up a table and invite me to the show and everything else like that, to be like one of 2 artists that were there, it was really great. There was another fellow I was there with who drew artwork for the Garbage Pail Kids. So I was like super intimidated because I was like, oh shit, here's a professional sitting next to me. But he was really cool. And, but it did bring back my memories of the very first convention I ever went to, which was just a little mini con before I think they were even called mini cons. It was in Warrensburg, and I'd gone with a few of my friends, just a handful, and we were all into playing Magic the Gathering at the time. And I remember we heard about it because that was just unusual. And I'd always seen conventions. I knew what the big ones were like, like the ones happening out in LA or whatever. I knew they existed because you'd see them pop up on the news, or you'd read about them in like, Wizard magazine or something like that. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that would be really cool to go to something like that. But the amount of people, that you would encounter was just too much for me to deal with. And I remember thinking to myself, like, it was really cool because that was actually, no, let me take it back. We had played games like D&D. I'd been playing D&D for maybe about a year, a few months to about a year and a half, somewhere in there. And we had not heard about Magic the Gathering. That's where we discovered it. So I take that back. And the reason I say that is because I still have, like, if you play Magic the Gathering, there's a series of releases. And it was early enough in the game that the guy, when we walked in, I think my friend Ray, Ray Brules was the one that had, I think he's the one that noticed. He was like, what is this? And we just saw this little brown box, and it had, like, the 5 little gemstones on it, said Magic on it. And he's like, oh, this is Magic the Gathering. It's the new thing that's taking off. And we're like, well, show us what it's like. And he's like, well, okay, well, it comes in boosters and it comes in this. And he says, the game's pretty new. This is the beta and unlimited releases. Now, for those of you that know what I'm talking about, you understand that I probably should have gone and bought everything I could have at that point in time, but I didn't know. I mean, nobody knew, right? It was right before it really became a worldwide phenomenon. And I remember him showing us the deck, and he goes, these are decks, and they're essentially pre-built. You can work with them and do that sort of stuff and play against each other, but you're taking on the role of a wizard, and you're basically, it's a dueling deck game. You summon creatures using mana, which is tapped from the lands. Now that I think about it, it was such a simple, much more simplified, level of mechanics, and all the decks I still currently own are built around that. I would never be able to play against most people because I know that, like, now when I look at the cards, and this is just showing my age, and back then there was only a tiny sentence on there. Everything was flavor text. All the icons counted for what you had to do with the cards. And I remember seeing for the first time, like, things like, a Shivan Dragon and all these other things coming out into play. And he played a real quick round, but I think it was Ray. I think he was the one that actually did it. We were just watching. And I walked away with my first booster pack of Unlimited and two packs of what turned out to be beta and a couple of other things like that. And it was really cool. It was the very first time. And I remember because of that mini con, it kind of fired me up into appreciating what smaller conventions can do. It's not that you can't go to a bigger convention and have a hell of a time. You can. You really can. But there is something so wonderful about very much the community feel. Like, it's safe for kids. It's safe for people to go to. It's just, the smaller shows really bring something more. It allows people to get into them and do stuff and not have to freak out too much about the cost or any of that stuff as much as it is with the bigger shows. It also gives you downtime to be able to talk to people and stuff in the best of circumstances, and which is something I love to do now. Now I love going to shows and finding things and finding deals and talking to people about the collections or why they're stopping or what else they're collecting or things like that, or just talking to people because that's something that I don't do enough of. I really don't get a chance to get out there and do that sort of thing. So, I'm sorry, I'm digressing. That show led to me wanting to go to more shows like that. Now, my friends really didn't do that until much later. I think a few of them now are still going to conventions. Some of them just don't give a shit either way. Whenever I was asked to do FanCon, when he was like, well, would you like to set up a FanCon? And I remember the whole conversation. I was like, yeah, sure. And then, like, it was just overall a really cool situation, a very neat circumstance. And I was very happy, to do it and to be involved with it and everything. And then I wanted to do more. And when I met Chris Jackson there, I found out, well, he runs this bigger show. I had no idea, like, the size difference between the two shows. I had no idea. And this is back far enough that it was still held in the Overland Park. Yeah, it was the Overland Park Convention Center. Not the same one that NakaCon is held in, but nonetheless, it was held over there from what I remember. And I distinctly remember how, like, that overwhelmed me. And he hadn't even moved to Bartle Hall yet. It wasn't the massive size that it is now. And I was really grateful for a lot of that, right? Because it was a moment where whenever I start to feel like unsure about myself, I'll think about the different shows I've done and stuff. And, granted, not all of them have always gone well. And some of them I don't do anymore. But it was the time and the growth and the people that I met during those times. Some people aren't around anymore, unfortunately. Time passes and things happen. They either get out of it or, otherwise. But the really cool thing about going to these shows is that I will never tire of it. Every single show last year and even the years prior, whether the shows were successful or not, I am eternally grateful for the kind of shows where I get to meet people and hear their stories and talk to them and really get to know people and, meet new people that may or may, even if they don't buy my stuff, which is fine, right? And I'm going to get to that here in a minute, because there's something that I encountered with a vendor this weekend that was a really, really positive bit of reinforcement for my business. So, you know, when you do that, you just open up the community more. It's a much better place, you know, just the whole advent of communication and fandom love and all this other stuff. Well, I had also been kind of like worried about a lot of the things that I'm doing this year, because I had said, you know, I'm probably not going to be able to do very many shows because of the dire straits, just financially, that I was in because of last year, which is fine. That's the ups and downs of owning a business. So anyway, this one vendor who was there, he had this really cool attitude about things. He was talking about how, and I've heard this before from some other people. Shows aren't necessarily for you to make money. It's going to sound like complete and total fucked up shit, right? It really does. Yes, you take things to sell. Yes, it's also an advertising instance, but it is also two other things that I think I sort of took into consideration, but I didn't really do. One of them being that when I go to a show, what I'm presenting, not unlike in this video, right? What I am presenting is myself. I'm coming forward. I'm playing the part of a vendor. I'm playing the part of somebody who's out there and shilling his artwork, doing whatever he has to do, you know, but more importantly, building relationships and communication with people about who I am, what I do, and everything else like that. To a degree, it works, you know, it does. The thing is that I never really launched myself fully into it. And so I think that that's been one of the challenges for my business growth is like, yes, I do engage, but not in the way I should. And it was further reinforced by a woman who I'd been talking to about my lawn and replacing it with some stuff. I ended up buying stuff from her because she was just really interested in what the problem was with my lawn. She never pitched a sale on anything. She recommended some things, and that was it. It was not a hard sale. But he went on to say that, you know, a lot of times what we end up doing at shows is we're so obsessed with the idea that we just got to move these things. And he said, and he understands that there's people that are like, hey, I'm only going to do this show this one time. I just want to get rid of the crap that's in my garage, or I want to do this, and hopefully people will want my stuff. That's fine. But even in the idea of being able to go to a show, and if this is something you want to do, right? If you want to do sales, if you want to do anything like that, it is truly being as honest and earnest and forthright as you possibly can with the people that are taking the time to look at whatever you have to offer. That, in the long run, will lend itself to long-term residuals. In a way, it is not that different than what any creative professional, well, any professional that works in a freelance basis or is reliant on word of mouth or reviews to keep going. It is the exact same thing. But it is something that I hadn't really considered whenever it came to how I present myself as shows. I think I did to a certain degree, but you always go into a show thinking, well, I've just paid for the booth. I had to pay for gas. What am I going to eat? You know, do I really want to take all this stuff home? And the obsession of that can affect your overall attitude on how you're doing things. And then that changes, and, you know, all kinds of things go wrong there. But I do feel that, like, with shows coming up, if I can really go out there and present, of course, the best of what I have out there, I'm going to want to focus on me being even more interactive, even more absorbed in the moment, and really reach out to people, to talk to them, to, you know, do that sort of thing, and not take it so personally. Because, as he was saying, sales should be happening all year long. And some vendors, some sellers, they get that, right? They'll have a brick and mortar, they'll have, you know, online Etsy store, whatever the case is, right? Because a show is really, at its core, the most hardcore marketing you can do. You're there in the moment, you're there with your shit, you're there trying to, you know, promote yourself and what you're selling and all these other things. And if you're somebody like me who is trying to make a living doing that sort of thing consistently, then it isn't just about making all the things or having all the most affordable things. It's about being able to convince people that what you have is worth what it is and doing what you can with it. I had gotten into a conversation with a guy that, although I agreed with where he was coming from, I did not agree with the marketing strata, because his whole thought process was based around the idea. And again, I'm not saying it was wrong. I'm saying it depends on who your audience is and where you're going with it. He was saying that he sold these little glass jars that had like a little mushroom that was glow in the dark in it. I don't recall if it was actually a functional or a real mushroom. I don't believe for a second it was. I think it was like sprayed with some glow in the dark stuff. And he sold them, I think, for $3 or $5 a piece, and he would have people come back and buy them and buy them and buy them. Okay, now that's fine. I don't actually have a problem with that. But he said every single artist needs to remember that you need to make as many things as you can that are cheaper, so that way you're making money, because you want cheap stuff for everyone. He was responding back to a comment. This was on TikTok. And he was responding back to a comment where somebody had left a comment, which I love seeing this, because at least it's the transparency of the mentality of what people are like at these shows. And the person said, if I don't find something under $3, I just walk by. That's not a real artist. They're not working for the grander form of the community. And I found that to be really bizarre, because, I know plenty of people, I know quite a few, that their average works start at 10,000 and go up. And they're doing fine. They actually are making good money. And they may only sell 10 pieces a year. But if you're making $10,000 on something, minus, the labor and everything else involved in that, you're still making an okay living, and they're not worrying. They're not trying to make miniatures of anything. They're literally selling the big thing. I've seen illustrators do the same thing with their services offered, graphic designers that are extremely good, that charge incredible rates to big companies. So the entire thing for me was like that, to a certain degree, is true. If I end up doing all these tiny outdoor fairs where people are going and it's more of a thing they did to add to the rest of their day and they're really not that interested. I went to a show here the other day that I'm not quite sure. It looks at the show, and I'm not trying to make fun of this. When I went, it was in an area that was it was down by the river here in town, and it was, holy shit, it was nuts. Because when you go to an art fair, and you may walk down an aisle of the fair and it's got tents on either side that are facing inward. There was none of that. There was patches of tents everywhere, and it was literally like people got there and they just decided where they're going to set up their tents, and that was it. And there weren't a lot of tents. There were people out there. The sun's beating down. It's super windy, and some people had no tents. Some people just had a table. There was a lot of jewelry. There's always jewelry at these shows. Always high end to really you didn't make that, you're a reseller. And then there was a lot of other stuff there were some working artists and some other people making some cool things, but it was so mishmash and so weird, and the prices were all over the place. But the majority of things were probably under $60, which is fine. But I also understand that a lot of people are so desperate to make a sale on something that they'll buckle at the first instance of it. There was a place, I'm not going to name the city because I don't want to embarrass them, but I was taking and I bet you can figure it out. If you follow me on TikTok, there was a very cool little museum that had a lot of retro stuff, very small town atmosphere, wonderful. And I bought a hand-published book. It was just bound with a plastic binder from them, and it was $5. And I remember they said, well, would you like a book about the history of our town? It's just $5. And I was just thinking for a second, I was just processing it, and I was about to say yes. They're like, or free. Okay, you may be sitting on a mountain of those, but stick to your $5. Somebody wrote that. Somebody took the time to research it. Somebody took the time to compile it, put it together in Word or whatever the hell you published this in, and put together this beautiful little, paper-bound book. It's just, I was like, okay, value it, right? I know that it was from a municipality and they wanted to promote their town and have these things, and they probably thought, oh, this is going to sell. People will really be interested in this because people love history. Do you need down? And that sort of a thing. And no, this what you're hearing me pull out is not a little shelf for her to walk on. It's a removable. It's a hideaway cutting mat. I designed it and built it into my desk so that way I have, whenever I'm sitting here, if I'm suddenly I have to cut some foam core or something, I have a place to cut on, or a hard extra area to write on, or whatever. But yeah, so all that cycled back to the original fellow who was talking about what the worth was and what we're doing in places. In the present, so in that instance, and again, this is nothing against either of the people I was talking to right before I paid $5 for this history book. I recall that, that they were so anxious to get a book out there, right? They just wanted to say, well, we gave one away. Well, yeah, but how much better would it have been? And I did. I paid $5 for it because it was worth it. I can't take things for free. That's something where even if I'm friends with people, I'm like, even at this show, I thought about that. I know that there's people that probably assume that they shouldn't pay for their booths or something, and I'm grateful for the few times that I'll get like a free table or something and an occasional show. It rarely happens for me because I'm nobody, right? And I'm fine with that. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking that if I make enough money, I should be fine with paying for my table. That's a professional thing. I don't owe anything to anybody. No, let me take that back. I don't believe I'm owed anything by anyone. I said that completely wrong. But in lieu of that, I do believe that I owe a lot to people that took a chance on me or that wanted that. So I am always willing to reciprocate back for things that were done in a meritorious way toward me. But I don't expect perks. I don't expect an easy route. I would like to earn that. I would like to get to that point. And so, but it was a nice wake up call for me in a lot of ways. I mean, I really was like, okay, cool. This is rad, and I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't gone to the show and seen that and done that. And then when I went to, after the show there, after we left Collectorama, which was a lot of fun, I got to catch up with my buddy Craig. We went ahead and we left. And my brother wanted to go to a couple of other places. So we ended up going to 1313 Mockingbird Lane, which is run by my buddy Terry. And it was a blast to catch up with him. It was just great to, quickly. It was so busy. And we picked up a few things from there. And then we went over to another place. My brother really wanted to check out this other store called Brothers Toys, which was also rather cool. Picked up a few tiny items from there. And we went to one of my favorite places, A to Z, where I ended up finding a figurine that by that time I was already so far out of budget, I could not pick it up. This is a Tonka release of the original Willow figurines that came out. And I'm hoping, beyond hope, it will be there in a few weeks when I get it. I'm probably shooting myself in the foot if anyone sees this and they're like, oh my God, a Willow figure, I want to go get it. And I love that movie, the original movie. The series is okay. I watched it and I was like, well, all right. It's kind of weird. It's kind of 90210-ish, but whatever. And it was still good to get out there. I ended up picking up, and I don't know where I put them. I don't think I have them in here. I don't know what I did. Oh, they're sitting over there. So I picked up a bunch of Warlord comics, and I love the Warlord. It's I think Mike Grell drew a lot of the cover illustrations for it, but it's a kind of a high fantasy sci-fi thing. That's a big thing for me. And I picked up that, and then at the shows and at the stores and stuff like that, I picked up a multitude of things. There was a guy there. He was selling Gundam models, and so he had these there, and these were priced at, I don't know if he has the price on this. No, he doesn't. I think these were $5 each, but this was one guy that really had his shit together when it came to marketing. $5 for this. He bought a massive Gundam collection, and these are brand new. They're in the box, and they're the Japanese versions, not Americanized in any way. $5 for this, and then 2 more for free, which was, I'm sorry, that's a great deal. And then my buddy Chris had a Joe for sale. This is Stalker. Well, I'm not going to take him out of the bag right now, but I picked up a Joe that I've been wanting for a while. I'm very much into the retro stuff. And then, although this was a little dinged up, but she is coming out of the package. Regardless of how I feel about the actress, Kirstie Alley had played Lieutenant Saavik on classic Trek in the movies, and this is a wonderful likeness of her. I don't know if you guys can actually see her or not, but that is a phenomenal likeness of her. And I just wanted something to add to my Star Trek collection, so this was not bad at all. I was really happy with that, and it was just a chance that I had stopped by that booth. I went by it 2-3 times. That's why I'm always telling people, like, walk around the show 2 or 3 times, because you would not believe what you miss. I'm going to say this here in a second because I have a funny story about Target. Because Target, of course, is one of the places we went because, we're sadists and we try and do that sort of thing. And then my brother bought quite a few Gundam models, so he kept getting free ones. And he asked me if I wanted this one. This is a Valkyrie, but I love that watercolor illustration on here of Lisa Hayes. That is beautiful. This is from Robotech, Macross, whatever you want to call it. I think that's actually Macross. And then, let me see here. What was this one? Oh, yeah, this is a trip. So up here in this case, that's my small Transformers collection that I've managed to put back together. I have a lot more. But that's primarily now turning into my Soundwave collection. I love him. He's my absolute favorite Transformer. And when I went to TF Expo, I had an opportunity to pick up this one really cool one that was it's called Hot Soldiers G1 style. So it's kind of a retro take on the Transformers that calls back to the G1, the original releases from the 1980s. And I had bought a version of Soundwave, but he was called, I think he was literally called like Sound Clip or something. This was called Soundboard, and this is the version of Soundwave after he came back from being killed and was rebuilt. And he's just rad. Now the crazy part, yeah, that's the alternate one. That's the other one that comes with Laser Bird, not Laser Beak, which is hilarious to me. But yeah, this is what he looks like. And that color combination is just so freaking rad. I love that. And what else here? Oh yeah, this. So if you guys are into Master of the Universe or anybody, you know, anything like that, my very first action figure for Master of the Universe was Stinkor. It was based on a skunk. And I don't remember if he actually made it into the cartoon or not, like the original 1980s cartoon. I don't remember if he did. I think he did. But I liked the toy. I didn't get a chance to watch the cartoon as much as I would have liked. As I've missed a lot of them. I even have it on DVD and I haven't gone through the whole thing. But I did finally find him. This bastard never showed up anywhere in any store. It was ridiculous, but he is freaking gorgeous. Now, I have my original toy still. He's over in a display case, and I have a small collection of Stinkor-related items. And it's just freaking, it's very retro. The artwork on top that's a glorious illustration. He is definitely one I want to do my own fan version of. And but he's one of those weird things in the line where, because he has enough of a cult following from people like me, he is often used for exclusives or variant chase releases or things. So finding his stuff isn't the easiest thing in the world. It's just not. Also, I think a lot of people are like, I'm not gonna fan favorite somebody named Stinkor. That's just not in my wheelhouse right now. So I think some people don't really follow down that line or do anything with that. I'm like, oh, whatever, you're lost. I think he's cool. I just like his white and black scheme, and I think he's a really awesome character. And then and I picked that one up at Terry's. I had taken in a trade-in, and so I traded for that and picked up the soundboard character. And then when we went to Brothers Toys, which had a lot of really cool stuff in there, I also got a chance to pick up two other items. Now, Mega Constructs is a not a knockoff. It's another building line component that is really cool. And so I managed to pick up Triclops in that. Now, this is like the disco fucking version of him, but I loved it. I had never seen this one before, and so I really wanted that. And he's carded, which is cool. The figures are, for a while, Target and other places used to carry a lot of them. You just don't see them that much anymore. I'm not sure why. Toy companies in general, distribution and what they do are just freaking nuts. I don't understand why they do what they do. And then there was a version of Evil Lynn I did not have. Now, this is not in the original thing. It's just polybagged here for sale. But it was $1 off of the carded version. I'm like, well, I planned on opening it anyway, so there's that. So that was cool. Now, the last bit was, it's one of those weird things where even if we go to a show, or even if we do these things, we're like, we don't know, we might find something on clearance at Target. This is the best thing that happened. I collect a line called G.I. Joe Classified, which is the 6-inch highly detailed versions of the old Retro Joes. And if you see here, like, well, my cat's blocking it, but this little area right here is filled with all my original Joes from when I was a kid. So those are the ones I managed to put back together and repair with new rubber bands. They're in there. And so I thought to myself, well, I'd like to have the newer ones, but I've been kind of picky and choosy on the ones I get, because I've been trying to buy the ones that I specifically either bought or got as gifts from my parents or something like that. And there was twins that came out later in the series called Tomax and Zaymont. They were awesome characters, and I always thought it was like watching two Shakespearean actors that were businessmen try and run a terrorist organization. And in the comics, they were far more ruthless. And of course, they had these awesome Crimson Guard commandos, or the Crimson Guard troopers, I mean, and they wore all red, and they kind of looked like if you took like a military unit and crossed it with a band, a marching band. It was kind of cool. But so these are the two guys. They were number 43 and 44 in the collection, and boxes are pretty normal on them, but they're literally mirror reflections of each other. And what I really loved about them growing up was just the whole thing. Like if one of them gets punched, the other one feels it. And the punch I got was, I saw in, it's really weird. Like these are new figures. But at Target, they had like, and people just mess around with things and move pegs around and all this dumb stuff. Well, when I got in there, I got to looking, and my brother's like, I think these things are on sale. I'm like, there's no way these things are $10.99. And sure enough, I pull out my Target app and I scan them, and they're not even remotely on sale, but they're on the peg. And I was like, well, what are the chances, right? What's it going to hurt? And so I go up to the front. I took a picture of it because I hate looking like that guy who's like, well, technically this was $1.99 back there. I mean, I know it's a lawnmower, but it was $1.99. I don't want to be that guy, right? And cause problems for people. So I took a picture of it in the event I had to swipe and show. And so I get up to the front, and the first thing I do is I end up putting them, I was like, hey, I want to buy these, but could you price check them for me? Because it looks like they were $10.99. And here, and I whip out my phone and I like, see right here. And she was like, okay. And she was like, she was nonplussed about it. She's like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. So she just starts to look, and she was like, well, the $24.99. But I'm quitting this Friday, so where's that picture? And so I show her the pictures like, beep, boop, beep, $10.99. So I basically got 2 of them for like $20+ off. And that was so wonderful in that moment. And and I was like, hey, well, have fun with whatever you do next. She's like, I am retiring. She's like, I'm done working. And that was it. I was like, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. She's like, you have a good day. And we left. And I just couldn't get over that. And that was like a nice extra perk that I hadn't expected, was somebody who's just like, I'm done. I'm just going to go do the thing I need to do. And I wish whoever that lady was the best freaking retirement, the best of days after this. I really do. Yeah, so there was that. I mean, that was some good times. And honestly, I'm glad I did this. One of the things that came up recently, and I try not to talk about personal stuff like this that much because, it is kind of a screwball thing. I am scared of this a little bit. So my dog Penny, who is a tiny little chihuahua, she's upstairs with her brother right now in the living room. She came down with a little growth right here on her chest. And at first I thought, okay, it's a cyst. But I kind of got worried because it wasn't going away or anything else like that. Well, after a visit to the vet, found out that it was possibly one of 3 types of tumors. A mast cell, I believe. I'm trying, so I have a really weird thought process on this. I don't try and think about stuff like that too much because I don't know the answer yet. She's due for a surgery on the 18th to have it removed, and they're going to go in and remove everything around it because there's 3 categories of it. The first one is a benign thing that, okay, once you remove it, that's it. There's nothing wrong. The second one is, it could be bad, but it's treated with steroids, and then that helps get rid of it, hopefully. Third one, class 3, is not so easy. That one involves chemotherapy, and is, quite frankly, honestly, the one I am fucking terrified of. Anyone would be. Nobody wants to hear that about anything, right? Cancer is fucking scary. I don't care who you are. I don't care what it's afflicting. It's just fucking terrifying. And she's 7. So, I mean, in my mind, she's still got like another 400 years of life to go because I don't want her to leave. I don't want any of my animals to leave. Luna Lovegood, or Luna Love Food, not Lovegood. That's who she's named after. Who you keep seeing walking past here is like 13, 14, 15 years old, something like that. I don't know. I pretended that number doesn't exist. I think any pet owner knows what I'm talking about. You don't want to think about that stuff. So I'm hoping for the best for her. So if you guys have it, certainly say, hey, good luck, little Penny. But yeah, it's been kind of crazy. Like after everything, it's been a really weird, trying time. I have been doing my best to get back onto the, a road of thought that's fairly normal and that sort of thing. And I'm already over 30 minutes. I had meant to add, I'm pretty sure I showed you guys this book last time. This is fucking with my head so bad. The whole Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, How to Heal from Distant, Rejecting, or Self-Involved Parents. There is a section in here I wanted to read. This is just kind of an idea because I had recommended this to a few people, and then I had somebody say, hey, would you read a part of the book? Well, yeah, and I'm probably going to end up doing this on TikTok too. So here's just a random section here that I got into. We're entitled, They Are Hard to Give To. Emotionally immature people crave attention to their needs, yet they're actually hard to give to. The trait has been called poor receptive capacity by researcher Leigh McCulloch et al. 2003. Emotionally immature people want others to show concern about their problems, but they aren't likely to accept helpful suggestions. They reflexively reject efforts to make them feel cared about. They pull others in, but when people try to help them, they push them away. In addition, these people seem to expect others to read their minds and are often quick to anger if people don't anticipate their wishes fast enough. They dislike having to tell people what they need and instead hold back, waiting to see whether anyone will notice how they're feeling. The classic unspoken demand of the emotionally immature adult is, if you really loved me, you'd know what I want you to do. As an example, one woman described her mother's habit of sitting in the den and waiting until a family member came in back from the kitchen to complain angrily that the person hadn't thought to ask her if she wanted anything. Instead of speaking up about what they needed, emotionally immature people create a malignant guessing game that keeps everybody uneasy. I have resisted the urge to throw this against the wall multiple times, not because I hate the book, and I also try and keep my books in pristine condition, because it is inflammatorily anger-inducing. And the worst part about this has been that it puts me in a position where I have to think about what I'm going through and make good decisions based on that. But it's opened my eyes to a lot of things that have affected me and how I should move forward in life with not just my business, my personal life, everything. So I'll have more on that later. I'm not going to make this video go any longer because I need to get it uploaded, and I really have some other stuff I need to get taken care of today. Thanks for watching, guys. And as usual, you can catch me on all these other different social media areas, stuff like that. I appreciate all of you that do watch and that, you know, keep this channel even somewhat watched. I really do. Thanks so much. And I will catch you guys in my next journal entry this next week. It looks like it's going to be a weekly thing. That's good. That's good. So, till then, take care. But one of the things I ran across was, no, this is not a pair of brass knuckles. This is my, somebody's like, what the hell's he got on his hand? This is just a little carabiner clip for climbing. I use this. This is my go-to for like grocery shop bags. Because, you know, like, nobody wants to make, 59 trips back and forth to your vehicle during that. So I just go, I'm like, and if I had to, I would. But I put 5 or 6 bags on this thing, and then I carry it like this inside. I don't know why I decided to share that. Who is an awesome dude. The man is multi-skilled, multi-talented, multifaceted. Just the definition of a multi. Just in so many ways. Like, just a multi-Terry is what it is. And that sounds so dorky. Multi-Terry. It sounds like he's a multi-purpose. Yeah, that just doesn't work. It doesn't work. We got to cut that, or maybe leave it in. One of the two. Yeah. So we went, and his show is wonderful, or his shop. I keep saying show. His shop is really wonderful.